To make little coconut tarts or Bakewell tarts, what I have is 100 grams of shortcrust pastry, and this needs to be rolled out. So as usual with shortcrust pastry, I'm just rolling once away from me and turning the pastry round each time that I roll to make sure that my pastry is not sticking. If you do this, it helps to give you a nice round pastry, providing you start off with a round straight away. And you also notice quite quickly if your pastry is starting to stick to the worktop. If you cannot move it after a rolling, you need to lift it up and put some more flour underneath it, or scoop some of the flour off your worktop underneath the pastry. Because these are small individual Bakewell or coconut tarts, I don't need to worry about what shape this pastry ends up. All that matters is that I don't have it too thick when I've finished rolling. So that should give me a nice thin pastry for the tarts. With your baking tray, the way that you can tell if your cutter is going to be big enough for the tray, that one just fits inside or comes to the edge of the hole that's in the tray. That would mean that would be perfect for a lid if I was going to do something like a mince pie. But if I cut one of those to show you, okay, if I put that into the tin, it's actually a little bit small. I've got a slightly larger cutter here which is just bigger than the size of the tin. If I cut that one and put that into the tin, that one comes up the sides of the tin. So this is the one where the cutter just was the size of the tin. This one was a little bit bigger. And because I'm doing Bakewells, that would be fine if I wanted to do jam tarts. This would be better if I wanted to do mince pies or the Bakewell or coconut tarts that I want to do, because I've got to have a layer of jam in the bottom and then a filling on the top. And what I don't want to happen is for the filling to bubble over the edge of the pastry, as it could quite easily there, and stick to the tin. So I'm going to use the slightly larger cutters and finish cutting my pastry shapes. Now 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I would have got 7 of these from the first rolling of pastry, and I'm going to re-roll this and just make a couple more. So there we go. In fact, I would have got 8. So I have 8 circles to start with. And because this is short crust, I can scrunch this up and finish rolling this pastry. So I have my pastry rolled out to make the coconut tarts, and I then need some jam or some marmalade, and I'm using marmalade today because I quite like marmalade. So a spoonful or 2 of marmalade, and I'm just going to stir this and make it a little bit runnier. It'll be much easier to use if I can just stir it up and make it a bit runnier. You could melt this in the microwave or in a small saucepan. The problem with melting it is that sometimes it gets really, really hot and it's quite easy to burn. So I've just stirred that a little bit, and then I can put a little bit of the marmalade in the bottom of each pastry case. So it doesn't need to be a lot of marmalade or jam, depending on what you prefer to use. If you think about the ones that you buy in the shops, they have a very small layer of jam in the bottom, and that's what we need to do here for these. So I just have a little bit of marmalade spread in the bottom of each pastry case, and now I need to make the topping, and the topping is made by the creaming method. So in my bowl I have 60 grams of butter, 60 grams of caster sugar and half a teaspoon of vanilla, and I just need to mix this together until the fat and the sugar are nice and smooth and creamy, and I've beaten a little bit of air into the mixture. Okay, I've mixed my butter and sugar together until I've got it a little bit lighter and soft, and now I'm just going to add a whole egg and mix that again with the electric mixer until my mixture is nice and smooth and hopefully light in colour. And I'm just going to use the spatula to bring the mixture from the side down into the middle of my bowl before I start to beat again, to make sure that I am mixing the egg into everything. Okay, so that mixture is done. I have the egg incorporated into there, and I'm going to get rid of my electric mixer. And the last ingredient is 60 grams of desiccated coconut. And the coconut is used instead of flour in this mixture. So I'm going to stir it in, and it will go quite quickly into your mixture, but it doesn't look quite like a normal cake mixture because the desiccated coconut doesn't absorb the flour, sorry, doesn't absorb the egg, the butter and the sugar in the same way. You get a mixture which doesn't look quite like a normal cake mixture. So it's all mixed together and it mixes in quite easily. And then the last thing to do is to get this into the cake cases, sorry, into the pastry cases. To get this mixture into my pastry cases, I'm just going to get rid of the spatula for a minute, and I'm going to use a teaspoon. Now this mixture is quite dry, it's not like a cake mix in that way. However, I do need to make a seal around the outside of this with this coconut mixture to stop any of the marmalade or jam bubbling up the edges. So I'm just doing it in tiny little bits and smoothing it out. It won't smooth itself out in quite the same way as a cake mixture would, so you do need to try and make the top as smooth as you can. These do rise, and it's because of the air that you've beaten into this mixture when you have been doing the creaming method. So when you've beaten your fat and sugar together and then beaten in your egg, you've actually got air into this mixture. You've also got the liquid from the egg, which also helps these to rise up while they're in the oven. So I've done a couple, and I'm just going to divide this mixture equally between the 12 cases, and then it will be ready to go into the oven. But you can see it's quite easy to put on. Just make sure that you seal at the edges before you go into the middle. Okay, So I've put all the coconut mixture on the top, and then I've gone back round once I'd made sure that I had enough for all 12, and I've used up the rest of it. I haven't smoothed them all off. I've left them a little bit uneven on the top because I think coconut is uneven. So these then into the oven for roughly 20 minutes, gas mark for 160 degrees. Okay, the little coconut tarts have been in the oven for just over 20 minutes, so they've got a little bit dark at this end, but same as with a Bakewell tart, you just need to touch them lightly on the top. We're looking for them to be golden brown, which these are. And what you want is a nice risen small coconut tart. And inside these at the bottom, same as in a Bakewell, you should have a layer of pastry. Not a layer of pastry, a layer of jam. There we go. I've put 4, 5 on a plate, and those are your coconut tarts.